Hi, friends. Welcome, welcome to the 13th Holy Night. Um, Last night was the final night of the signs, and tonight is the Spirit Holy Night. And I'm going to share about that. But first, I'm going to give a recap of the other 12 Holy Nights, just kind of somewhat succinct. My name is DeSutter. I'm a soul level astrologer, certified. I trained at the College of Visionaries and Wizards with Master Astrologer Mark Borax, who developed soul level astrology. And he learned this system of astrology from Ellias Lonsdale. And what I'm sharing with you about the 12 Holy Nights is coming from transcripts from Ellias from earlier this year. So, welcome. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a recap of the 12 Holy Nights here, and then we'll do the 13th Holy Night. So, the first thing I want to acknowledge is we also today are in the Wolf Moon. Happy full Wolf Moon at, I think it's at 18 degrees Cancer. Um, so, this is a very potent evening that we're in, and a lot of people I know are experiencing quite a bit of chaos right now and overwhelm. So if that's the experience you're having, I just encourage you to do whatever practices or ways help you to root and ground into your own being and calm yourself and really stay focused on what matters for you. Because as we go in the recap, that's going to make more sense. We are getting ready to go into, so the first holy night on December 25th was the sign of Capricorn. And on January 13th, Mars goes direct at 9 degrees Gemini. So we're getting ready to go into Mars direct. So the energy is going to be soon, not yet, but soon, like winding up and getting ready to go boom. And that degree where Mars is going direct at 13th Gemini is wildflowers growing by the ruins of an ancient temple. And that timing, that Mars direct, is about growing our future capabilities, our future possibilities, our future visions, your future drives, and your future dreams. And then 3 days later, Mercury goes retrograde at 9 degrees Capricorn. And that degree is a woman washes a man's feet and dries them with her hair. And I see that there's some people watching. So if you're having trouble hearing me or you're hearing me well, either way, if you can drop a comment in, that would be really helpful. So that Mercury going retrograde on January 16th at 9 degrees Capricorn is about that degree of a woman washes a man's feet and dries them with her hair is very much related to the energy of Magdalene and the Christ, of course. And it's about the Grail quest. It's about how do you take the very thing that you agreed to before birth, the very thing that you are meant to do in this lifetime. It's about taking that journey. Even if it feels impossible, you do it not because it can be done, but because it must be done. And not out of obligation, but rather because your deep instinct that's calling you directly to do it. There is whatever your soul is here that it must do this time. That's what's happening. And Mercury retrograde, and this goes for all Mercury retrogrades, interrupts the program that's going on, this imposed conditioning, the regular business as usual syndrome. And it's important for us to run things differently, to feel differently, and to act differently. So that is the first holy night. The second holy night from December 26th is the sign of Aquarius. And on January 22nd is the day that we start the year of the water cat. We'll leave the year of the water tiger behind, and we'll begin the year of the water cat. And the water cat is about being like a cat. How do you tune in? How do you listen, observe, become present to every nuance, every movement, every moment, and every subtle energy. And cats have an instinct for what's going to come next. They actively, internally are attentive, and that makes you a part of the universal weave and part of an ongoing continuum of new life that's accessible to you if you tune up and tune into it. And the year of the water cat is also, it's water. It's about the Grail quest. And we're on a Grail quest in a world where nothing makes sense and it just keeps going like this. And therefore, when nothing makes sense, how do we keep going? What do we do? What we do is we set out to find our own soul again and to see if there are spiritual forces on tap that can help you to find yourself, to find me, to find this one inside of you. Because I've been saying you, but it's really I for all of us, because I can't live without myself. I can't live without my truth, my reality, my ultimate existence. I can't live without why I'm meant to be here. 2023 is the year of the Great Vision Quest. And then we come to the third holy night, December 27th, in the sign of Pisces. And what happens in the sign of Pisces in 2023, on March 7th, the planet Saturn, the planet of meaning and value, the planet that holds our prenatal vows, Saturn goes into Pisces. I'm going to say a little more about this one because this is a very significant thing for this year. And this is Anne talking. I'm not speaking from the transcript from Ellias right now. So this astrology was downloaded from Atlantis, believe it or not. That's just what I have been told. I don't know that to be true from direct experience, and I imagine the possibility that that's true. And the way that the Atlanteans looked at astrology was they weren't interested in the Western astrology, which is the astrology more of the personality and how we show up externally in the outer world. And they weren't interested in the Jyotish or Vedic astrology, which is our pure spirit self connected to spirit. What they were interested in and curious about is what is the business of the soul on earth? What is it when the soul comes into this incarnation on this planet, in this timeline, in this dimension? What is going on for that soul? And thus, why Mark Borax calls the system soul level astrology, because we put the soul before the astrology. So, Saturn. Pisces rules sound. It rules hearing. And the last time that Saturn was in Pisces in the 60s was when all this wild, amazing music like the Beatles came through. And there was a whole new sound that we were tuned into in that frequency. And when Saturn enters into Pisces, it becomes more and more about the inner life and taking us on a greater journey in your own destiny by immense forces. Saturn in Pisces is a decisive influence because it brings us into our deeper hidden places. It makes us face, live out, come to grips with our innermost story. It begs us and it entreats us to plunge all the way. And many of us feel that we've already plunged all the way and it's taken us too far already. No, that is not true. It's not true that we've plunged in all the way, and it hasn't taken us too far already. If we had gone too far already, the world would have changed. We wouldn't still be in this transition with this great battle between the light and the dark that's happening here. So make no mistake, that's what's happening right now. The dark forces and the light forces are in a battle in the collective, and also within each of us, we're in that battle to whatever degree we are. If we'd gone too far already, then the world would have already changed. We haven't gone far enough. at all. And the time to go all the way now is 2023, 2024, and 2025. And Saturn in Pisces is going to help to take us there. Saturn in Pisces says, if you're going to be so intense about the whole thing, if you're going to want yourself to be actually getting through to a new reality, why don't you actually take the journey instead of beating yourself over the head with what you're not doing all the time? Why don't we give ourselves a break and just do it? And I understand, I know, this is Anne speaking now again, I've had a year of really finding my way to leaning into the things that I have not wanted to deal with my entire life. And I couldn't do that until I was good and ready. So we can only do it when we're good and ready, and Saturn in Pisces is going to help us to be able to do that. Saturn in Pisces comes on, and Saturn in Pisces says, do you have any guts? Do you have any feeling for the fact that the journey is unknown, out ahead, and that it's pulling on you and calling you, and that you really, really cannot refuse? Do you have any sense that it doesn't matter whether it looks good or it makes you successful or it has the upside of being just terrific or wonderful in some way? What matters is that you have to unite with yourself and with the very essence of who you've always been. And most of all, you've got to unite with yourself with the very deepest side of who you need to become. Now, the shadow side of Saturn in Pisces is annihilation and self-annihilation, where we take that too far and we're just annihilating ourselves. No, 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 no. That is not going to be helpful. Do not waste your time and energy with that. Just when that starts to arise and you feel yourself in a state of self-annihilation, red flag, do not go that direction, turn in the other direction. Okay. Now, most of us are not ready for what's coming. In fact, we don't want it to come, and we don't feel that we can possibly rise to it. However, what I'm saying to you, and we'll be going into this further later on, it's simply that this is our destiny. This is our occasion. The flood tide of evolutionary change and planetary change is upon us. And we can view it through every mode we want to view it through. But it is upon us. And from a Saturn and Pisces point of view, instead of shutting your ears to what's being told to you, you have to open your ears. We all have to open our ears. Instead of shutting down our subtle senses so that you're tough enough to survive, you need to open up your subtle senses, so as so many of us have been discovering, and that also relates back to the year of the cat, to listening, to tuning in, to becoming attuned. And we have to really be attentive, really be tuned up, because those of us who are tuned up enough will not be at the mercy of the end of the world. That's a program for those who don't really feel they belong here. And if you're listening to this, you belong here. And no matter how you feel about it, if you're here in a body, you belong here. If you're here, it's because you belong here. Period. End of story. No more listening to that voice in the mind that says, oh, I don't deserve to breathe air here. Oh, I don't belong here. No, that's just a lie. We all belong here if we're here. Okay, moving on to the fourth holy night, which was December 28th, to the sign of Aries. And the event of the fourth holy night is on March 23rd, Pluto enters Aquarius. So we have Saturn enter Pisces and then Pluto enter Aquarius. Whew, what a year this is going to be. So Pluto in Aquarius, is about what we all have in common. Becoming less convinced that the past must determine the future, and that we swim toward the future with glad, sure strokes. Glad, sure strokes. That's how we want to swim toward the future. I have to adjust my leg here. We're going to do this because we discover that we can. We discover that the life of the heart, because Pluto is about our deepest love. Well, so is Pisces and so is Scorpio. Pluto is Pisces. Pluto is about our deepest love. And we're going to discover that our heart is true and rightful, and the life of the mind that we have been so hooked on is always about duality and polarity, and that we can be unified. We can be a unified being in a unified world. We can be multiple dimensional beings in a multi-dimensional world. And in fact, we are multi-dimensional beings. We just forget about that. And just as I said that, my light got brighter. Nobody is touching the light switch, I promise you. So that's interesting. Must be something about that to pay attention to. We can be one and many. We can be one and many. And we don't have to always be two against each other. And we discover that everybody's right, instead of what we went through in Pluto and Capricorn, which is that everybody is wrong. We're going to have a new possibility, a new affirmation, a new revisioning, a new way of appreciating and beholding and loving and saying yes, yes, yes to each other, and most importantly to ourselves. And that takes us to the fifth holy night, December 29th, and the sign of Taurus. And what happens in the sign of Taurus on May 5th is the Wesak moon, the Buddha moon, and the Christ moon. When Buddha and Christ come together at the Wesak moon every year, it's a time when we're encouraged mightily to come through ourselves and become a bearer of love that can redeem the world. This is the time when our life depends on loving, and we actually then will let ourselves love, and our life depends on it. It's the time to cut through our little egoic mind and come to the true self inside of us. And the thing is it's not until for most of us that it gets so extreme and abyss-ridden inside of us that the only thing that we can do, the only place to go, is into the heart of creation, where we're one with all that is. We tend to avoid that until something like pushes us in there, whether it's that you get cancer or somebody dies or you have a breakup or a big change in your life, you lose your job, whatever it is. Most of us won't go to this place until something pushes us there. And this moon gives us that opportunity to go into that space. The power and the symbolism of the fifth holy night is that the rest of the year of 2023 really is the year when we go belly up. When we can't go on, we've been on the way there, but we haven't gotten there yet. It's the year that the shit really hits the fan. And trust me, after I went through in 2022, it is hard for me to imagine that 2023 is actually the year that the shit's going to really hit the fan. So take a deep breath and strap yourselves in, my friends. It's the year when the shit really hits the fan. And when we discover, and it doesn't have to be horrible that the shit hits the fan. It can be a relief, like hallelujah. Let's let the shit hit the fan and let's go and let's get through this. That's what wants to happen. Okay. It's the year when the shit really hits the fan, and when we discover that what we're made of, and take a tremendous turn in the direction of reclaiming our place in this world. Christ is what takes us through the thickest and darkest. And Jesus said, this is Anne speaking, in the book of Thomas, which was one of the transcripts from the disciples that they hid in the caves so that the bishops wouldn't get their hands on them and water it down like they did all the rest of it. Jesus said, for if you believe that the kingdom is in the sky, then the fish will precede you. And if you believe that the kingdom is in the sea, I'm sorry, I messed that up. If you believe that the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds will precede you. And if you believe that the kingdom is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. But I say unto you that you are the sons of the living God. And when you come to know yourselves, then will you become known. So that is the invitation for the fifth holy night. The sixth holy night, December 30th, in the sign of Gemini. On June 17th, Saturn goes retrograde at 8 degrees Pisces. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this one because we're back to Saturn and Pisces again. So this is the continuation of that journey into Pisces with Saturn. And we all know Saturn and Pisces, one of the things it teaches us is about suffering. And we all know how horrible it is to suffer. Why would anybody want to suffer? The answer is it's much, much more life-giving to suffer and to die and be reborn and go through it than it is to avoid it and flee from it. That's the key. That's how we move through it. We don't have to suffer so much if we just can let ourselves go into it and go all the way down through the bottom of it. And the bottom of this one is very deep, my friends. What causes the suffering is our resistance to it. And so, Ellias says his discovery endlessly is in the Saturn and Pisces vein that everything runs counter to the way that the mind works and the mind thinks. Everything runs counter to the way the ego works. Everything runs counter to what we tell ourselves commonsensically all the time. The way it actually is when we get to lose ourselves completely. That's when we have a chance. When we get to lose ourselves completely, that's when we have a chance. All of us, everybody on this call listening to this recording, if you hadn't gotten through the 2020 so far, none of this would be happening. None of the good things that you're now starting to reap would be happening. It's been the most magical, marvelous, incredible time because it's been bloody awful. And the world has just about ended and nothing's going the way it should. And that's why we actually have a chance now, because we have a chance because the world has just about ended and nothing's going the way it should. Just before all this happened, things were really, really, really bleak. I mean, really bleak. Because we were on a flat level where nothing could ever resolve itself or go anywhere really. So we need the roughage of the deep ocean of Pisces. We need the incredible exposure, the raw primal exposure to everything that could kill us, but could also bring us back around. And I hope you feel, as I feel in this moment, a great relief. I feel a great relief to say these things, which I never say because I, in my ego self, think that I'm mostly someone who has a great time in life. Ha! That's a really good one. And I think that I'm really good at making everything wonderful and amazing. Well, I am, but on a very superficial level. Do you feel in your depth soul that you can take the journey even deeper and further than you have so far? Can you even pledge yourself during 2023 that if it turns out that the collective energy needs to dive to the very bottom, that you can, instead of resenting it and complaining about it and judging it and condemning it, that you could actually say yes, yes to it, that you could actually dig into it with a passion? Could you do that? Could you please, would you please do that? Is it possible that that's what's called for? And the key here is this is not that this is something that has to happen forever. This is not a formula forever. This is simply when you've gotten down this far, you've got to go one leap further issue. We simply haven't hit pay dirt yet, and we haven't quite grabbed the fullness of it. We haven't quite grasped it. We're still fleeing from it. And so when Saturn goes retrograde at 8 degrees Pisces, that's the time. And what is the date of that again, just so that it's clear? That's going to be on June 17th in the sign of Gemini. Remember this. Remember this piece. And this recording is going to be on YouTube, and it's going to stay here, so you can come back and listen to this whenever you need to be reminded of what's going on. So the 7th holy night, December 31st, in the sign of Cancer. On June 23rd, Venus goes retrograde at 29 Leo. And I highly recommend you listen to this whole talk. This one was really off the hook. I'm just going to encapsulate it here. Venusian love. This is Venus going retrograde at 29 Leo, which is going to really activate our Venusian love nature. And I'm not going to talk here about what Venusian love isn't. I'm just going to say briefly, Venusian love is not when we use our wit and our charm and our beauty for self-aggrandizement. It's that simple. And here's what Venusian love is. Venusian love is what happens when love breaks the world open and we realize what we're here for, and we do it for real from the deepest heart of our being. Love in the Venusian sense is a commitment to the soul to become filled with light and to give that light freely and openly to all those we love. And what is Venusian love at its most simplified? It's a place where you remember how to breathe. It's a place where you reach inside yourself and you realize that you are made of love and that there's a beauty in you that's beyond any possible external vision, any possible external version, and that there is a living essence in you which radiates from the deepest source and can never be effaced, can never be taken away. And it's realizing that you are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth. And you want to bring it out, and you don't want it to be hidden under a bushel. That's Venusian love, which gets activated in the sign of Cancer. And then we move to the 8th holy night, January 1st, the sign of Leo. And on that night, on July 24th, Alpha Omega, the comet that most people call Chiron, Alpha Omega goes retrograde at 20 degrees Aries. And that night is all about the healing of the masculine wound. I also recommend that you go back and listen to that one because it is just too many pieces pulled together for me to fully recap here. But what I'm going to say about it is with the masculine wound, it's about going all the way, and going all the way in situations so that what men do is when they feel something going on, they tend to ignore what's going on in themselves and make it more important what's going on with their woman or with what's happening outside of them, and just cast aside their own feelings and their emotions and things. And biologically, that's the imperative. This is Anne speaking now, not Elias. Because if men are going to protect the perimeter of the community, of the village, and make sure nobody comes in and kills us, right? Then as warriors, the masculine, and I mean the masculine because we all have masculine and feminine inside us. Whatever kind of genitals you were born with, we have the masculine and we have the feminine. And most men with male genitals tend to carry more masculine, and most women with female genitals can tend to carry more feminine, and that is not true for everyone in these bodies because we're all extremely unique creatures. So, that said, and there went the lights again. That said, and here they come again. Okay. Healing the masculine wound is, instead of the masculine ignoring and not tending to themselves and retracting and retreating and avoiding leaning into what's happening because they're not able to access it in their body and in their being and in the denseness of the masculine body, it is allowing themselves to go all the way with something and to go through it and not step over it and show up all the way. And this cycle of Alpha Omega retrograde at 20 Aries is the cure for our inability to love ourselves. So go back and listen to that one if you want to know more. Okay, the 9th holy night, January 2nd, in the sign of Virgo. On August 29th, Uranus goes retrograde at 24 degrees Taurus. And I'm going to abbreviate this one as well. Uranus is the planet of internal vision, of clairvoyance, and of the light dawning within. And briefly, what most of us do, most of us don't purely access Uranus. We tend to spiritually, mentally, emotionally masturbate with Uranus. We tend to get off on the energy of Uranus and get spun in it instead of actually letting it take us somewhere, because that's what it wants to do. Uranus wants to take our most advanced, our most evolved consciousness and evolve it further, not just trip out in how great we are, but actually take it and go deeper and go further and really, truly evolve. So in this time of Uranus, it's a time when we feel our hunger, our thirst, our yearning for connection. But most of all, going further in our own awareness. The task we've set for ourselves in this Uranus retrograde cycle in Taurus is to get to know this person inside. Who it always turns out that we don't actually even know yet. Imagine taking yourself off the hook that you already know who you are and being willing to say, I have no idea who I am and I actually want to find out. I want to find out who this is. Who am I in here? That's the opportunity this Uranus retrograde is giving us. And it's also, how can you tune in to these subtle energies? If you're busy, this is the block most of us have, another block we have with Uranus. If we're busy criticizing ourselves and questioning ourselves and doubting ourselves all the time, or counting the reality of this or the liability of that, then we can't actually tune in. So it's time to let go of the self-doubt. Okay, now, the 10th holy night on January 3rd, the sign of Libra. On October 14th, there's a solar eclipse at 22 Libra. And I'm going to keep this one very brief because eclipse land, man, it takes us into a whole tripped out territory. I listen to that transcript, and I'm like, I don't know if this made any sense to anybody because it just takes us into this whole lunar landscape, right? But briefly speaking, when you're in, I'm sorry, this is a solar eclipse. The Wesak moon is a lunar eclipse. But when we're in an eclipse, who you are as a being is open to question, is up in the air. An eclipse is not about entering a state or a condition. It's entering a process. It's entering a test and a trial and an initiation. And that brings us to the 11th holy night in the sign of Scorpio on January 4th. On November 4th, Saturn goes direct at 1 degree Pisces. So here's one more round. Do you get it, guys? 12 holy nights and signs, and 3 of them are about Saturn and Pisces. And he could have chosen different alignments to speak about those nights, and he chose Saturn and Pisces repeatedly, and there's a reason for that. And I'm hoping it's starting to become real for you what that might be inside of yourselves. Saturn going direct at 1 degree Pisces is culminating the whole first wave of Saturn in Pisces, which will last for 2.5 years. Saturn in Pisces is a restoring of perspective, a return to a feeling for how it all comes together. When we are in the deeper roots of this world, as Pisces always wants to be in the ocean that underlies the surface of the earth and permeates the planet in the living ethers, we have a path to follow to discover what is sacred, what that word really means. Discover what it is to be in a sacred relation, because when you're in a sacred relation to the whole of life, it all speaks to you continuously. It reveals itself to you. It's a portal. Everything becomes a portal. Everything becomes a doorway, a gateway to the infinite in the future, into all that is meant to be. Everything of Pisces is really about making the connection with the whole from a vivid, direct, experiential place. And then finally we come to the 12th holy night, January 5th, the sign of Sagittarius. And the cosmic event that happens during the sign of Sagittarius is on December 6th, Neptune goes direct at 25 degrees Pisces. And I'm going to read a little bit of this, and this is another one that I recommend. Go back and watch this one here on Facebook or go to my YouTube channel, because this one was very deep and he took us through a lot of spaces, and I can't just do that all in a little recap. And there was a part of it that was very heavy and hopefully very freeing. So Neptune is clairaudience, and it's what happens when we start to listen in silence, in peace, in stillness, in a state of faith and confidence in creation, trusting and allowing, and no longer being this caustic, bratty, trendy character who basically treats everything as though it's either fascinating and compelling or it's not worth having anything to do with. Neptune transcends. Neptune is the planet of Akashic recollection, of soul remembrance more than anything else. What do we remember when we remember through Neptune? We remember the fiber of our being. We remember the essence of who we are in a selfless way. Not the self-filled self, but the selfless self. In a selfless way. In a self-giving, loving way. Not in a self-container, absorbed in ourselves way. And that state is grace. That state is worth all the struggle and all the thriving to find that, drop into that, and feel held. Okay. And now we come, sorry, I am looking for it. Here it is. We come to the 13th holy night, and that's tonight. And I just have a little bit of transcript from Ellias to share with you about the 13th holy night. Okay, so here it is. We find that the Christ within us has been accompanying us through the whole journey and hasn't been saying or doing anything. I'm sorry, I'm going to rewind here a little bit. So, Epiphany, that's tonight, January 6th. So all of the holy nights are from the time of the birth of Christ until the arrival of the Magi. That's what the 12 days of Christmas are, right? And so Epiphany is the night of the epiphany of this is the Christ, here is the Christ. And it's not about some baby that was laying in a manger over 2,000 years ago, 2,023 years ago to be exact. It's not about that. Yes, he did what he did. Yes, he came, and thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, Jesus, for saying yes to your destiny so that we could be where we are now, right? And now the 13th holy night, in one way, is the Epiphany, which is January 6th, tonight. And it's the time at the end of the holy nights when we come to the place where the Christ within us is there and is infusing us with the Holy Grail that we have been questing and seeking this whole time. And when we stand in Christ's presence with the Grail shining, we suddenly realize and we find that Christ has been accompanying us. Christ has been within us and has been accompanying us through the whole journey and hasn't been saying or doing anything except subtly influencing us to stay with it. It's like that poem, the famous Footprints poem. He's just been accompanying us and like being with us and saying, it's okay, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this. Stay with it, stay with it, stay with it. Don't leave this place, don't leave, stay with it, stay with it. To stay with it, to remain focused, to not get sort of thrown out too far to either side or any facet. And we come to the Epiphany, this point of reckoning and realization where we get it, that we've actually been ourselves throughout. We've never been missing. We've never been lost. We've never been gone. It's just that we needed to play it out as though we were, because that's how we do this particular weird journey that this existence is all about. It's a shadow world. We're in a shadow world, but it's a shadow world where the things and where the beings of light are right here with us, infusing us with their mana so that we're not actually so crazily swept away. Swept away is a good way of saying it also, but he actually said swept away. And Ellias here speaks about his wife, Sarah, who died of cancer, and he says, she had always been, before the last moments of her life, a little bit too charged up. She was so Uranian. She had always been a little bit too charged up to actually settle down into a space where she could be just super quietly present and utterly there. She was always kind of a little bit excited and thrilled and tripped out with Uranus and Gemini. But at the very, very end of her life, she was so calm and so quiet and so concentrated and so there that it was breathtaking. And Elias realized that he had experienced the stillness person, this peaceful, concentrated, true being, the entire time that he and Sarah had been together. That's who he was drawn to right away, and he was with her all throughout. And she never really showed up until the very end. But when she showed up at the very end, what she said to him telepathically was, "This is who I've been all along. Don't you know that?" And that was the note that she was dying on. Complete self-knowledge and self-presence. And so Elias knew that he had to be in that space too, which he was. And then he could do the dance of the triple death at a whole other level. And the triple death is a reference to an experience Elias had that I'm not going to go into here, but just to give it a little context. Elias has known since that we all have the 13th holy night being in us. This one who is very still, so observant, so quiet, so at peace. And that one actually isn't on a quest or journey, isn't going from one place to another, is actually all-encompassing, is actually just like the gods in the vaster worlds. We're just like them, the gods in the vaster worlds. They're just like us. We're not really these fallen little creatures that we play out, but it is, as I've said so many times, a total necessary subterfuge that we're doing. We have to fall into shadow. We have to be crazy and confused and confounded and lost and fragmented and everything else. This is what we do. This is who we are. Yet, it isn't who we are. It's who we're not. We're being who we're not in order to eventually get it that we can be who we are now. And that being who we're not was really a great adventure, but it wasn't the ultimate adventure. And the ultimate adventure is when we stake a claim to being this true, steady, rhythmical, fine-tuned, right there presence who has a look in their eye that once you see it, you'll never forget it. That look is in you, it's in me, it's in us. This entire sharing is for that one. Let's get who they are, be serving their essence, because we are anyway. We might as well know it, and then the sacred dimension can flower, and we can turn this whole thing around. This is what we're going to do. Thus spake Ellias Lonsdale, and I give my deepest gratitude to him, to you, Ellias. Thank you for your years of study, of dedication, of work, of learning, of pulling all of this through and pulling through these transcripts so that I could share them. These, I've been adding my commentary, but these are Elias's words, and I just give my gratitude for that. I give my gratitude to Mark Borax for teaching me everything he has that I can sit here and do this. I give my gratitude to all of my many teachers and all of the lineages that I have and do study. And I give my gratitude to each of you. And I thank you for joining me, whether it's been for this one night or for all of them or some of them. Thank you so much. Please, please go back and listen to these recordings when they will help to support you to navigate the cosmic weather throughout this year. Please, please love yourself more deeply than you can even imagine. And I wish you the deepest blessings of Epiphany and of this year. And I thank you so much for joining me and coming together for this incredible journey. And you're always welcome to come to me for private reading if you want to have your chart and any of this be activated and go deeper into it. It is my privilege and my honor to sit with your soul. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to listen to these recordings or any others. And just thank you so much for being here, for having the courage and the desire and the deep love that it takes to be a human who's incarnated on planet Earth at this time. And may we succeed in every way that is our deepest, most sincere, truest soul and heart's desire. Thank you.